morning, happy Friday. So this morning I'm going to do a bit of a demo and talk through podcast graphics, because that was what was voted on when I put a poll yesterday to see, what should I train on this week or have a look at. For those that are watching on replay, hello. Don't forget to put hashtag replay, and then I can answer any questions for those that are watching this via Facebook. So I can see one eyeball, so hello. If you'd like to say hello and say who you are, I may be able to see who you are if you clicked the allow StreamYard to access, and then I can see who you are. But anyway, in the meantime, I'm going to crack on and talk you through how, what kind of templates are there in Canva regarding podcasts. I had an email from Canva's newsletter. I think it was either earlier this week or last week. I can't remember now. It's all a bit of a blur. And one thing I saw was that there was, it sort of curated some examples of podcast graphics and some tips in there. So it was like, oh, well, let's have a look at that. I'll also talk through some things to keep in mind when you're looking for templates, what to keep in mind when you're picking them. And also we'll have a little go at customizing sort of one or two, just so you can see how you can make it your own. So let's start by sharing my screen. And then I can get going. Let's hide that little banner on StreamYard. Okay, so when it comes to Canva, regardless of whether you've got the free version or the pro version like me, there's going to be some way to be able to search, just sort of general, putting in podcast, and you should come up with some ideas here. So you can see that there's a number of different styles here. If we have a little scroll, there seems to be these orange ones seems to be a bit of a kind of variations of the same sort of theme. So that's quite useful if you're wanting to sort of not have exactly the same one, there is slightly different things here, or, different versions of it. It's quite sweet or quite fun how they got these little kind of graphics and squiggles and things. You can see that they've contrasted a very black and white image with this sort of bold orange. So you could use this as your theme, if you feel that the black and white styling would suit your target market. So I can just see Chris Lambert's joined on StreamYard or on the live stream. So hello, morning. So yeah, so in terms of sort of looking at it, whenever you're making any decision about choosing any template, when you're in Canva or other, you need to be really having at the forefront of your mind, who is this going to be appealing to, who is this aimed at, because you want to make those decisions with that in mind. So do keep that in mind when you're sort of doing, making any design decision. So as you can see, you've got some here which has got, a mobile phone with multiple pictures. So that could be quite good if you've got, you're having not just one person joining you as your guest, that you want to feature a number of, like a group podcast. That can be quite good. But as we have a little scroll through, you can see here this Artist Life, the podcast. So this one is very simple. That's almost sort of just like a logo, I guess, and it's very simple. So it doesn't necessarily have to have lots on there. So don't feel that you need to have everything. I think having a picture of yourself on there somehow is a nice way of the audience connecting with, putting a, the voice to a face. So I really like this one here, A Lot of Laughs. That one looks really nice and fun. The title of the podcast is really clear. you know, there's some fun graphics there. And you can see here there's that hierarchy of text. It's something that I talk a lot about in my training, you know, in my group program, Lovely Canvas Circle. And it's really important to consider, you know, what do you want people to see first, you know, and so in this context, as a podcast, you want them to sort of know what the name of your podcast is. That needs to be the hero. So you can see here my 2 cents, timeout. So these are sort of example names. Fans are funny, a lot of laughs. So you can see that you can read them clearly. There is a bit of text that's a bit smaller. So like, you know, the name of the person, it could be the brand name, you know, if it's come here on this Fans Are Funny, it says the podcast for comedy lovers. So that's a bit like a strap line. So if you want to have a bit of a descriptor, but try not to like have everything on there, keep it as simple as possible. And as I said, you want to sort of really think about, you know, what's going to really stand out. So this all is wellness one, in a way, I feel isn't as strong. It's certainly calming, but because of the text there, it's much harder to read. It hasn't got that same boldness as, say, you know, if you look above, you've got Riley Johnson here. You know, that's quite bold text. You can see that it doesn't stand out as much. So bear that in mind, you know, in the context of if it's in some sort of podcast viewing or listening place like Spotify and iTunes, you know, is your podcast cover going to be competing with all of those like you would if you were, you know, looking for a book on Kindle, for example? So just like you are influenced by a cover, a book cover. You know, we like to, there is that saying, you know, don't judge a book by its cover, but we all do. So people will decide whether to listen to your podcast, or they'll be more appealed, it'll be more appealing to them if, you know, the podcast cover really ties in with what they're interested in. So, you know, this wellness one here isn't necessarily bad, but actually I think I might click on it and see how I might be able to sort of maybe improve it a little bit, just so that we can keep it all nice and calm, but maybe make it so that it just stands out a little bit better. Let's have another kind of little look through. Another thing to keep in mind as well, I see it a lot again as a general kind of design thing. You want to make sure that there's enough contrast between the text and the background. So here on this practical skills one, the practical skills title stands out nice enough because it's a bolder text, and that's fine. But this text here, how to do things and with Taylor, is a very thin, lightweight font, and you know the background's sort of quite soft there. So keep that in mind, that maybe you want to sort of use a slightly bolder text could improve that. So or making sure that it's more contrast. So I might click that one as well, just to sort of show how those sort of small things that I just talked about can make a little bit of a difference to just improve, you know, the readability of it. Because good design isn't just about making it look pretty. You know, there is that thing of making it appealing, making it look attractive, but the other side of it is that fundamentally you want people to be able to read what you've written and you want to appeal to them, engage with them. So that's sort of key things. Let's have a little look. And also, once you're in the template, so something to consider as well is that you have got the access to the templates here. So for example, if you decided you weren't sure about this one, you know, once you've clicked on it, it's not the end of the world. It's not like, oh, well, you've clicked that one, you have to use it. If you click add a page, and within the templates bit, we could maybe have a look and see like wellness. So these are all ones which are in the category. So the Get Fit one is a very different feel to this one here. It's very much more like bodybuilding kind of look and feel. It could be that you type in sort of something like yoga. So, okay, there's not a huge amount. Another way of doing things as well is if you're feeling that you're not quite getting the look and feel that you want, or sort of the access to sort of some of the image ideas, what you could do is just go over to sort of good old Instagram templates, Instagram posts, and having a look there. So you would need to sort of keep in mind, you know, that you would really just have the title of your podcast and maybe a little bit about, you know, what they can expect from it. But certainly in terms of sort of images and styles and stuff. So if we put like yoga in Instagram posts, so these are all kind of, say, yoga related. So some of these could be a good combination of bringing those two in together. So if we have a little look and see, again, I wouldn't use these Instagram templates just as they are for your podcast, because they, you know, some of the text is quite small. This one here, for example, probably could work because you've got the yoga class bit. We'd probably want to remove some of these other bits if you were going to use this one, for example. So going back to this one and looking at, you know, what can we do to improve that. So let's get rid of this one. So what I like to do when you're deciding, you know, whether to make any changes to your design or, you know, to a template, it's really useful to duplicate it, because it means that you can refer back to it to, you know, especially if you're quite new to using Canva, you know, you're maybe not so confident, you know, you haven't developed that design eye for things that you trust, like what you've done. What you can do is just, as I said, if you duplicate that, it means that you can have a little play, but it means you can refer back to it. If you do forget to duplicate it, don't worry too much, because you can always add a page and bring that in. And so you can always, you know, add that if you need to. Okay, so let's see what we can do to sort of make this a bit stronger. So one thing that I felt that when we were looking at it in a small context, so if I go back to the podcast cover and see if I can see it in that smaller view, because you know, this probably gives you quite a good idea of, you know, how it's competing with possible other podcast templates. It's also maybe worth looking at, you know, what your competitors are doing, because you want to do something that sets you apart. You don't want to copy what they're doing, because otherwise there's, you know, there isn't that point of difference. So as I said, this font here, because it's got some very thin bits to it, it's not reading as well. So it is very nice, but it's like, maybe is there a way that we can make it a bit bolder or bigger? So if we ungroup these bits and bobs, because that's what the templates seem to do, that you have all these things, elements grouped together. So let's make this go across, and I'm thinking if we make it quite a bit bigger, let's try 250. So I don't mind it going across her, because she's wearing sort of quite a pale outfit. So I'm going to be changing the kind of the balance of it a little bit. So we'll adjust that and take a view on it. But I want to go as big as possible with this. Let's try 300. Okay, so I think that's sort of about right. Let's make it centered to the page, because it was slightly off. Let's hide that tab so we've got a bit more view. So I don't like how the is going across her. I don't mind the wellness going across her. So I might make it a little bit smaller, to the point where it's not going over her elbow. So I'm just going to keep going. And I could actually make the, you know, it different sizes of text. So maybe have the all is smaller, and that works quite well. I think I'll maybe make that a bit smaller again. It's all a bit of trial and error. So now that this is centered, I want to make sure this and this is also centered. So I'll probably need to use the sort of the pink guides that sort of help you. So I'm going to move it to about the center, and then you can see that that sort of, that pink line popped up. So that's just a sort of handy guide. it looks like these are not quite centered. So yes, so don't assume that you know, everything is exactly aligned. So that text is centered, but the box, these two lines weren't centered with it. So these are all centered now. I'm just wondering about if we were to keep that strap line, we'd move that over. So again, I'm like thinking, I don't want this smaller text, her knee, to be sort of showing there. And I think it would be useful to have that a little bit bolder. So although it's smaller text, again, like I was saying with here, with this like practical skills one, making sure that it's just that little bit bolder means that as it's so small, you'll still be able to read it. So another thing that I can do to sort of give this a little bit of a lift is using the text effects. So I like to use this shadow one because you've got more control. And I'm actually going to use white behind because I want to create a bit of a glow. So if I zoom in a little bit more so you can actually see what I'm showing you. So we've got the shadow applied. I've made the shadow white. I'm going to make it really blurry, and I'm going to make the transparency and just sort of play with it there. What kind of direction do I want? And how much offset? So I probably don't want it to be offset too much. And really all of this is to do is just to give it a little bit of a lift and to help make sure it's not about being obvious. It's very subtle. You know, you may not be able to see it that much, but what it means is when we zoom out, if I duplicate it and show you kind of with and without, so if I click none, so it just gives that little bit of a lift behind. It's quite subtle, but it will be that little thing that kind of helps with making it that bit readable. And we could do the same to this one, but I think because it's on that kind of plain background, it's not actually going across that woman, it's fine. I'm just sort of looking at, I would prefer to be able to move that was it horizon down a bit, but because her foot is there and anchored there, I don't think we can. So another thing that we could do, I'm just thinking of like how I can like have a little play with this and change it up a little bit. Just make sure it's lined up. So I think I prefer that slightly more, but I'm going to now use the tip that I said about with the using the shadow. But firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, what you can see is there's quite a lot of letter space. So between the letters, it's very spread out. So if you click on this thing called spacing, it's got the like 3 lines and the up and down arrow. You can see it's got 337 spacing in the letter. So I'm going to take it in so that at least sort of it's not kind of touching the knee on that bottom line. But it's still spread out enough that it's got that kind of nice airy feel. And I'm going to do the same thing as before with this top one and add a bit of an effect. So you get a bit of a replay. So shadow, I'm going to do white because I want the glow. I want it to be as strong as possible because we're going to then blur it out a little bit. Probably you want to match the direction that it's going. Still want it quite soft. And I don't want the offset as high. When you have the offset lower, it just means that it's not, you know, spread further away from it. Sort of, it's to do with sort of how, if you picture where the light source is. So when it's a lower number, it's going to be a bit more of a halo. So if I show you here, so I can see that Sarah German's joined us on the live stream. Hi, Sarah. I'm going to say hi, German. Hi, Sarah. So yeah, so if I take the blur off a minute, or not as much. So with the offset, so can you see if you go higher, it's going to go further away, but I'm using this as a bit of a lift. So I want it a bit more closer to the letters. She's saying hi, O'Neill. Thanks. Happy Friday. So let's increase the blur a little bit, and then let's see how it looks. If you want to go sort of more subtle with it, you can obviously change you know, how transparent it is. So it's pretty subtle. Again, you know, if I copy that and pop it onto this one, I move that over there and remove the effect. There's not a massive difference really, but sometimes in design it's not about having a really massive difference and like dramatic change. Sometimes it is that all those little touches that really bring it to shape. So you can see here I'm trying to make it a little bit more even, the spacing between the bottom of the end there. I might move that up a little bit, bring that up a little bit. And so this is all really sort of nitpicky stuff, but it does make a difference. And then it's what do I do with this line? You know, do I want to have it there? Maybe you want to line it up with the, I think in this case, it makes sense to sort of visually line it up, and always use this toggle to sort of zoom in and out to really see what you're doing. It's really tempting to sort of do stuff at a distance where you sort of got, and then you can just go click on where you got the percentage and go fit, and then you can see the whole page. And it just means that, you know, you've got that kind of detail. So if I go back to what we had originally to do a bit of, right, let's move that over there. So that's this little page icon, close grid view. So this is what we had before on page 2. Not a bad design, as we sort of saw earlier. That's the kind of in context, so it's a bit smaller. And then if we look here, I've made the wellness really big. All is wellness is, you know, the supposed podcast title, and I've made this a bit bolder. So it's not massive amounts. I've also made it centered in order to have that as big as possible. So I've adjusted all the other elements. You know, this has got some nice balance to it, but hopefully those little bits of touches can just elevate it. And so if you were to use this for yourself, you know, you could change this to being for, you know, if you liked the idea of the lines, just because there's a lady doing yoga doesn't mean that you couldn't have, you know, some other kind of thing. So like, let's see about tech stuff. Let's see if we can make this techie. So if I pop that in the back there, so you can see we need to adjust this now. So what we can do is we can still make use of the effect, but instead of having a white shadow, we could have a black one, which will help lift it against the dark background. So think about what the color is in the background. If the background's light and you want it to have a lift in the way that I've shown you, then you want to use sort of black or a dark blue. We also want to make the text white. So if I put like all is techie, I don't know. And then let's make it a bit bigger. So also like the font needs to be a bit different. So these lines would be better being white so you can see them. Musings on all things IT and tech. This is where I can't spell technical stuff, or I don't know, there we go. It's not a real thing. So let's pick a font that is a bit more techy. So we could use that one, or Makoto. That's very sci-fi. So let's bring that. Sarah German says, I think this is for you, Chris Lamp. It is. I dedicate this one to you, Chris. So I'm going to move that down a little bit because, you know, it's all a bit adjusted. So you can see, if I move that up, how I've taken, you know, what started out as being very, you know, yoga and wellness and meditation is all very calming. The principle of using that line, you know, having a bit of text, you know, just changing up the image, changing up the fonts and stuff like that, and just considering that means that you could really use any template and make it your own. But as I said, take that moment to think about who it's for, what you're doing with it. So I hope you found that useful. Stop sharing that on the various things. There we go. So we've got 3 people watching at the end of this on the live. So thank you for joining me. And I hope you found that useful if you're watching on Bplay. This is the sort of thing that I train on as part of my group program, because it's all about showing you how you can make the most of Canva, and also the things that I've shown you in this snippet, you know, about the podcast. It's about, you know, these design touches. You know, you can learn this yourself. You don't have to be a trained designer, but certainly it's about picking up all these little tips as you go. You know, this is stuff that I picked up over the years, and, you know, as part of my training and stuff like that. So Sarah says she's off to try All Is Addy. Maybe work on that name. Not sure on that, but I like what you're trying to do there. Anyway, have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.